So I'm Alan Swenson. This is my talk about JSON Web Tokens, JWT, and Flask. Mostly it's about JWT tokens, but at the end I'll show you how to implement it with Flask. Ooh, nice. My info on the screen. If you want to check out my portfolio, email me or Twitter. I'm also going to have that at the end. So if you actually like to talk, then you want to talk to me later, that's how you get me. Professionally, I'm an audio engineer and use software to, I use software for recording, but I also develop software to make it so that our business can deliver the products faster than our competitors by having a good workflow. Not Python related, but I do Python nights and weekends, and for the past 6 months I've been working on with Flask. So here we go. So what is JWT? Officially it's pronounced JWT, but I've literally never heard anyone say that. So I'm just going to go with JWT. It's a JSON Web Token. It's not specific to Python at all. It's what makes it great, or one of the reasons that makes it great, is that JSON can be used in most languages, at least pretty much every language that I know of. So it can be shared between different APIs or different software that you develop easily. What makes it awesome is two things: compact and self-contained. It's compact because it's small as far as how many characters it is, and just a small size so that it can be passed quickly over the web. And it's self-contained because it has all the information that it needs to be verified without needing anything else all by itself. There's three parts to a JWT. I've divided them up by color. Obviously, they won't come in color, but they're separated by periods. The three parts are the header, which I have in purple, is first, the payload, red, and signature in green. It looks like random stuff, but I'll show you exactly what's in there. So an example header, once it's decoded, would have something like this, and this is pretty standard what would be in it, and that would be the algorithm and the type, because it's a JWT. It's telling whoever's receiving it like what type of thing that it's sending. And the algorithm HS256 is pretty standard, but you could change the algorithm, or you could have no algorithm, but you shouldn't have no algorithm. But it tells it how to encode it with the HS256. Let's see, those are pretty much the main two things that are in the header, but there is some optional stuff if you look at the documentation. Then the second part is the payload. This is the, I would say, important stuff that you'd want to pass, like the user ID, the name, if they're an admin or not, literally whatever you want. However, JWTs are not encrypted. They are only encoded, and someone can decode them very easily. They are base 64. So you don't want to put anything in there like the password or like something that someone would want to use to do anything. So like user ID is pretty not nefarious, and name and if they're an admin, whatever, that kind of stuff. Even email address you might not want to put in there, just because that's one more piece of information a hacker might have. But you could put anything you want in there pretty much. And then let's see, what did I write about that? Claims or statements about the entity, typically the user, and additional data. So again, whatever you want. We have three types of claims that are in the payload. Registered claims. These are things like the issuer, the expiration time, subject, and audience. Normally you're going to have an expiration time because you don't want the tokens to be valid forever. You want them to expire so that if someone does take one over, it's not good. And if it's only like a 3-minute token, then it's going to be hard for someone to hack within the 3 minutes. But if you have no expiration, then those tokens are good forever. So most of them have expirations when people are using them. These other ones are reserved words, issuer, subject and audience. You could have those. You could also store things like IP addresses of the token to verify that. Those would probably be in public claims though. So public claims are the things that you're defining that would be like the user ID and the username or whatever you decide to put in there. And then private claims, I'm not going to go too much into those, but those would be specific claims that maybe if you have multiple services accessing or using the same token, one might need claim A, one might need claim B, so they would have their own private claims depending on which one was accessing them. Third part was the signature, and to create the signature, you have to take the encoded header, the encoded payload, a secret. The secret is the secret to making this all work, and the algorithm specified, and you sign that. So unless someone knows the secret, they can't change the payload even if they know what it is, because as soon as you change the payload, the signature won't match any longer. And so that's the whole thing about the tokens, is that even if they are taken, they are still only what they are, and you can't change them. And a hacker would not be able to say that they are you if they take the token, their own token, and then put your user ID in it, per se. So why would you use JWT? JSON is shorter, as you can see here. This is like an encoded token. This is the same encoded token in XML. It's way longer. And then decoded, although it's kind of blurry because of the screen, it's very human readable, whereas XML is very hard to read as a person. That's one reason why you might want to use it. There we go. And why I like to use it is the tokens are stateless, so you don't need sessions, and that allows you to use things serverlessly, like AWS Lambda for your Flask site, where it doesn't matter if they've logged in on one server and then they're passed off to another server with load balancing or any of that kind of stuff. If the server closes and another one opens, they'll still, it just checks their token and they're still logged in, and you don't have to worry about having 400 Lambda servers running at the same time and then people constantly saying, I don't know who you are. That's why I learned about it, and that's why I like to use it. There's of course other reasons to use JWT. They can be stored in cookies, so it's not like a cookies or JWT kind of thing. It's just a different type of token. It's more of JWT or sessions as opposed to JWT or cookies. You can store them in the header, you can store them in the cookies. There's different ways to pass the JWT. All right, the three main modules for JWT and Flask are PyJWT, auth-lib, and Flask JWT Extended. Flask JWT Extended is an extension of PyJWT, but that's the one that I'm going to talk about the extensions are the features that I like and that I use. So in its most basic form, this is there's 3 slides of this because I wanted you guys to be able to see the different text, the different code for it. This is the most basic way to set up Flask with JWT. So we got our imports, basically just Flask and Flask JWT Extended, a couple of functions from each one, but nothing extra, just those 2 things. We have declaring our Flask app here. Your secret key, you can use the, of course you want to, pick a good key and pull it in from your environment like normal, but you can actually use that secret as part of your secret for your JWT tokens, so you don't have to have a bunch of different secrets, just use that. One of the easy things to use from Flask. Then we're declaring our extension with the app here. Standard way to add extensions to your Flask app. All right, then we have our login route. So this is going to check if the username or password is right. So I'll just walk you through this real quick. It only accepts post, not get. So basically you're just sending a JSON message with the username and password, and if it's right, it'll let you in. So, or it will generate a token actually in this case. So first thing we check for is it JSON? And if it's not, tell them go away. Then we store the username and password from the request, or none if they didn't send any. And then if there's no username, then we tell them to go away, missing username. If there's no password, we tell them there's no password. And if the username and password are not both test, which is going to be our test username and password, we tell them that they've sent a bad username and password. If all that checks out, we create an access token. Create access token is JWT extended method. Excuse me, let me grab the water real quick. All right, so it creates the access token for you. It uses your secret. The payload is what you determine here is your identity. So you can, in this case, we're saying it's the username. And let's see, we got secret payload, and then the headers, it automatically fills this in for you. So you don't even have to worry about telling it what kind of token it is or anything like that. So literally, it's very easy. Access token equals create token, pick an identity. This could be identity equals user ID, whatever you want to do. Then we just return the token. Then if you want to access the protected route, this is, when you send the token over, it'll check this at JWT required is a decorator that only lets people that are valid get into this particular endpoint. So that all you need to do is use that. It checks the token. If it's valid, it lets them in. We set our current user with this function, get JWT identity. That's another function from the JWT extended, which will just save whatever the identity is. So we said it was the username, I believe. One sec, username. So the username will just be current user. Then we return logged in as, and then the current user. And then we got our basic Flask stuff at the bottom for running it. And let me run this for you real quick so you can see it working. I think I can make this bigger. All right, so we are trying to access the protected URL without being authenticated. So it tells us we're missing the authorization header that we need. This next section will come in a second. There we go. So then we send the header as type JSON. And it's a post method as opposed to get. And then the data we have is the username test, password test, and we're sending that to login. So what we receive is the access token. That access token is generated by Flask. Then what I'm doing here is we're going to export this access token so that we can use it to access that protected URL. So now we're sending the authorization bearer as the access token that we just stored to the protected website in the header, and then we receive login as test, which is basically what we were trying to do, protect that from people not using the correct username and password. Let's close that up and go back here. All right. So extra credit stuff. You can have, a useful way to set up this kind of stuff is to have access tokens and refresh tokens. So what you do is you issue a refresh token with a long expiration date, like maybe a month or something. It's to kind of set up like when you visit a website, and every month they do actually tell you to log in again, but you don't log in every time you come. So that's the refresh token. And then and then it gives access tokens with short periods, like 1 day or maybe 30 minutes or whatever you set. So when you access the website or API or whatever, it checks to see if you have an access token. And if you don't, then it checks to see if you have a refresh token. If you have a refresh token, it gives you an access token, so you don't have to log in again. But that way, you're only using the access tokens to access the website, and they have shorter expirations. So again, chances of people stealing the tokens are lessened. All right. Then the other thing about being stateless is that the tokens are valid until they expire, and the expiration dates are built into the tokens. So if you know that someone has stolen your password or et cetera, we need a way to make the tokens invalid, but you don't actually have the tokens to change. So the way that this is generally done is a blacklist database. So when you log in, it checks to make sure the token is valid. Then if the token is valid, it checks it against the database to make sure that it's not a blacklisted token. And if it is blacklisted, then it's still not valid. So this is generally to, again, like maybe, this is like an invalidating your cache kind of thing, you know? Just whenever you need to say, I don't know, maybe you had a security breach or something where everyone's passwords and usernames were stolen. Well, if you blacklist them all immediately, then nothing can happen. So this is that kind of thing. Generally, it would more be like one at a time kind of thing. But that's how you do it. And then what you also do is they do still have a natural expiration date, so they can be removed from the blacklist once the expiration date is passed. So blacklist doesn't have to like go on forever and ever and ever and ever. All right. Then again, I'll post this so that you guys can have it. But these are my main two sources: auth.com, which is OAuth, Oath, or whatever it's called. They have a lot of stuff about JWT because that's the basis of the way that works. And then JWT.io also has tons of information, and both of those I've used to create some of this. Again, my name is Alan Swenson, and this is how you contact me.